What's up, y'all, and welcome into the Jack Vita Show. I'm your host, as always, Jack Vita. We are back in action today for another exit interview. Deal or No Deal Island. We have the 8th contestant eliminated joining us today after episode 8. We also will have a recap up on this channel and on our podcast feeds as well. Stephanie Mitchell, of course, from season 1. She and I are getting together each week, and we are breaking down the episodes. We're sharing our thoughts. We're discussing all the strategy, cracking some jokes, having a good time. So make sure you guys are all subscribed to this channel and to our podcast feed. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. The feed is called Jack Vita Show Entertainment. Make sure you guys go and subscribe so you don't miss out. All right, we got a really great interview today. Shell Wooten, the latest contestant eliminated. And, you know, what I thought was really interesting, what I'm really interested in talking about with her is the fact that she didn't really get a lot of screen time. She didn't get a chance to verbalize too much of her strategy on the show. So I think it's going to be really interesting to sink our teeth into that and hear about her time on the show here on the Jack Vita Show. Let's get over that interview. Here we go. At this time, we welcome in the latest contestant eliminated from Deal or No Deal Island. It is Shell Wooten. Shell, thank you for being here today. Sorry that it's under these circumstances.
It's quite all right. I'm so happy to be here with you.
So I got to know, First things first, everyone wants to know, why did you take the deal? You know, you had a 1 in 3 chance of securing a good deal. Yep. You hold on to that to the end, you at least get a 50-50 shot. So why'd you take it?
Well, the way I was looking at it was really more 50-50 because I only had 2 cases left on the board. One was really low, like 250, and one was, a couple of million. And the way I looked at it was, if I don't have this 250 in the case that I chose, then I'm really, really taking a serious risk, right? If I pull the 250 off the board, I'm a superhero, but I still might not have more than what's in my case. If I pull that, 1 point whatever million that was left on the board, then I become Luke, right? I drop down to almost nothing. And ultimately, I still may end up going home, right? For sure, I would go home. So for me, I wanted to live out the case I picked. And I also wanted to, if I had to leave, and even if I didn't, I wanted to make sure I put a significant amount of money into that pot.
So if you end up getting a good deal there, what happens next for you?
I'd have to send someone home.
Yes. And yes. Is it Dixon?
No, it would not have been Dixon.
No, it was a misdirect from the editors.
It is. Well, no, it's not. It's actually what we said, but that's not what it was going to be. Dixon and I had a conversation beforehand, and we knew it was going to be one of us. And both of us agreed that if we won, we weren't taking each other out. Because we also both agreed that neither of us were the biggest threat to the other one in the game. Right. So I was like, yeah, I wouldn't be you. Like, I'd rather be in the end with you than these Avengers that are sitting here. Right. Because, I mean, if you just look at them physically, they're enough of a threat. So, yeah, no, that is not who I would have taken out.
So who would it have been then?
It would have been Lety.
Okay.
Yes, which I think would have been a shocker, right? Because I didn't have any problems with anyone. But the way that I was calculating it was Parvati and David were off limits because they were safe, right? Because those 2 could have been up for grabs. There was Phillip, there was CK, and then there was Dixon. Dixon and CK, like, they're formidable components, but physically, they don't look like superheroes, right? And Lety and Phillip were also way more physically capable of some of what we might be facing. But Lety also was taller. She also had a lot of power in the game. She picked who got to play the banker multiple times. I was like, yeah, she would have to go. That would be better for my game if she wasn't there.
How much of a fight did Lety put up when you guys were like, okay, we got to leave Lety back here at the start?
She put up a bit of a fight. It was interesting. She was kind of shocked, right? She thought, well, because I'm physically better, then that's better for the team. But at this point, right, there's less than half of the players left. And nobody is looking for you to kind of be a shield for them anymore. It's like nowhere to hide. So everyone was really going for their own. So I do think she was quite surprised. She did fight a little bit, but not for long. Dixon tried to fight for her, and then look what she did when the time came. She put him up for elimination. So I thought that was interesting.
Is Dixon crushing on her at this point? Is that what's going on here?
I don't know how much he's crushing on her now that, she put him at risk again in Temple
Yeah.
right after he tried to fight for her. But he might still be playing that, right, with her. I don't think she believes it at all. And clearly, nor do I think she has any interest in Dixon. Not just because he's Dixon, but he keeps setting himself up in the game where he seems just like weak, which I think is his game. But weak guys are usually not what women are looking for.
Is Dixon actually, it was funny. I watched this with a couple of friends the other night who
Yeah.
had not seen the show before, and they're like, why does everyone hate this guy? That was
Yes.
a question they got from the
Yes.
episode. So that's
Yeah.
my question to you.
Well, I don't think it's really a love-hate thing with Dixon, right? Dixon, the person, is quite lovable and also quite intelligent. Dixon, the game player, his choice of how to play, like he'll run around and tell everybody the same thing, like no one else talks to the other. And then also he plays, everyone was very frustrated with his role as the son of
Mhm.
David and Parvati in the family. They were like, you're a grown up. Like, this is not really the right role to play, especially if you want the other contestants to see you as someone worth competing against. So it really, no one hated Dixon, but people got kind of annoyed. He took the little annoying little brother role. And no one was there for those kind of games.
Yeah, that whole thing has been a little puzzling, I think, to a lot of people because it's just sort of like, well, he's not that much older than you. Like, it seems more like a big brother, little brother kind of thing than
Exactly.
son
Exactly.
and dad.
But also,
Um,
he's such a big fan of reality TV. I really think it started with him sort of fanning out on Parvati. And because Parvati and David formed this alliance early on that wasn't so easy to see for us in the beginning, he
mhm.
kind of inherited David as his dad.
You know what I thought was very interesting? Something you said in the episode was that you trust David, but you do
Mhm.
not trust Parvati. Tell me a
Yes.
little more about that.
Well, David and I shared a tent, right? It was me, David, Sydney, if you remember that far back, and Maria
Yep.
Grace. And Sydney was gone pretty quickly, and Maria Grace was gone a few weeks before. So it was just him and I. So I was able to get to know him like as a person outside of the game he played. And he was actually quite wonderful. David would be protecting people he cared about, me and MG. He was very protective of us, even though he wouldn't make it boldly known to the whole group, but he would make moves that would keep us out of harm's way. And then Parvati, I totally didn't trust Parvati because, first of all, no one else did. I never saw Survivor, so I didn't know anything
Mhm.
about her, but no one else really trusted her, even though they were like fangirling over her. And I saw her say things or tell people things and then immediately do the opposite. So I figured that's how she plays her game.
Were you aware of this conflict between Philip and Parvati that we saw on the air when it happened at the time?
I was. Yeah, actually, Philip mentioned it to me before he actually said something to her, because he was quite hurt by that. And I understood, I'm a social worker, so I understood what was happening and how he felt about how she used a really vulnerable share to try to manipulate him and pit him against Will. But I was aware. I was happy he spoke to her because I don't think he had planned to do that in the first place. As you know, she said, "You haven't talked to me for days." Right? He was going the quiet route, but it got to a point where he was like, I have to say something. And I'm glad he did.
And you didn't see that as any form of emotional manipulation, as she
Oh,
suggested it
no,
was.
no, 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 no. It wasn't emotional manipulation because he wasn't even looking for her to make an apology, or he just needed to get it off his chest because he had a level of trust in her. They played every challenge together as a team, as a pair. She was like, "You're my husband. I love you." And so he felt like if she genuinely cared and saw him as someone that was really a partner to her, she would never have done that to him. He would hope she wouldn't do it to anyone. But it was not a manipulative strike on his part. He just got to the point where he couldn't hold it in anymore.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
was clearly something that really upset him.
it did.
So, were you surprised that you didn't get more screen time?
It was interesting. I when I was filming, I got plenty of screen time. Those cameras are in my
Yeah.
face all the time. But what I do, this was the first reality show I've done. What I do recognize is when there's 14 people, right, that you have to edit into an hour, there's a way you have to edit so that people understand what happens in the end of that episode. So I wasn't surprised, but I was actually quite pleased with a lot of the sound bites I got, how they captured a lot of my facial expressions. And clearly, I've been seeing through social media, as little screen time as I had, I really resonated with a lot of people. So, I was fine with it.
Very cool. I'm glad you enjoyed the experience and had fun with it. Was there something that was not shown that you were surprised was not shown, didn't make the air, that was important to the
Oh, God, there
story?
was so many things. Well, important to my story, not in particular, because the role that I played in this cast, which is the role that I play in life, is I'm sort of the place you plug in when you need to recalibrate, right? And get back onto your equilibrium or calm down or like let go of some stress. And so my role was pivotal to the games of many other people. I mean, it was the way that helped me play as long as I did. Like I was shocked I was there beyond longer than Dr. Will, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys say that this guy's a champion, right? And so I was excited that I made it as long as I did. But my role and what they didn't show were more things about how I supported, because that was part of my strategy. I'm going to help you feel okay and you will appreciate me for it, but I'm not going to help you enough to make you even better than you already are.
Very cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Was there anything that didn't involve you that you were surprised didn't make the air?
Oh gosh, let me think. There was so many. I was surprised they didn't show the conversation between me and Dixon, right? Because we
Yeah.
talked and we were like, here's the deal. It's going to be one of us. Both of us didn't want to play, right? And we said, it's not going to be you. Dixon didn't tell me who it would be, right? I did tell him it would be Lety for me. I pretty much assumed it might have been CK for him because they've been battling throughout. But I was surprised they didn't show that. There were a lot of things that kind of told the story of what you saw that I think would have maybe made it clear or made it a little juicier, that I'm surprised, was left out.
So you made mention earlier of Sydney,
Yeah.
and you played a role in her elimination.
Yes.
How much of that was your decision versus CK's decision? Because for those who might not remember, it was the
Yeah.
second episode. You guys
It was the
played the
two of
banker
us.
together, and you sent Sydney home.
Yes.
How much of that was your decision versus hers?
Oh, CK and I were equally passionate about sending Sydney home. I feel like I might have been slightly more passionate because I was living with Sydney, right? She was in my tent. So I think I had a little bit more stank on it. But we knew should the opportunity come, she was out of here. CK was actually very strong on her going too, because Sydney would disrupt CK emotionally. It just kind of sent her spinning, and we were only second challenge in. So she wanted her out of there too. So it was fairly equal. We were both pretty positive and passionate about her. There was no debate about anyone else.
Was Sydney just a difficult person to live with?
Yes. Well, yes, in the sense that Sydney, every time she opened her mouth, it was a different story from her. Right? It was a different, I did this, and then it was like, oh no, but I did this. It's like, oh, I don't like this person, and then it's, I love this person. So it felt like we were playing, she felt like 5 people. And 14 was enough.
So another mark on the season that you had was that
Yes.
you were the person who caught MG and Storm together.
Yes.
If you hadn't seen that, would that have become obvious to everybody else, or was that something? No?
I don't know. I really don't know, because they were pretty on the hush hush about it for a little while. But then after I spoke to her about it, I think, she kind of got comfortable with other people knowing. She was afraid that it would put a target on her. And as we saw, they went home, boom, boom, one behind the other. So I don't know how much that played a part. But yeah, I do think eventually it would have become public knowledge to everybody.
So you're not sure if the showmance was part of why they went home or not.
I'm not really sure. Like, it didn't feel like, and here's another reason I'm not sure. I was the person in the cast that, one, people kept the drama from, but also people didn't want me to know what they were doing behind like other people's backs. It was almost like they didn't want me to be disappointed in them. So they would just keep it quiet, and then I'd be shocked. I was shocked almost every temple at the choices people were making.
Are you haunted at all by your decision to drop out of the excursion, or were you just kind of like, there's no way I could have ever done that?
No, 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 not at all. Because here's the thing, right? Had this been, some of our excursions were timed, like this one. Some of them, we didn't have a time, right? It was like, get it done. So if this wasn't timed, I think I would have given it a shot. Even though the gorge was scary, the heights again had already faced my fear of heights twice already. So I wasn't looking forward to that. So I don't regret it at all, because even if I had done it, I don't think I would have completed it in time. And then I would have felt like I failed myself and the group.
Lachelle, is there anything else that you want to talk about or clear the air on or share
Yes.
that you haven't gotten to? Go ahead.
Yes. I want to talk about CK.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because it's interesting to me how the public sort of sees her as this villain, and she wasn't, right? The thing that CK did, yes, she cheated, right? Okay, great. We're trying to win millions of dollars. You don't know what you would be capable of. But CK was super strategic, and she was always fighting. Her goal was to get women to the end. So like the challenge where she took the captain 50, all the women were on the other team and we were safe, right? And she kept herself safe with that case. It was strategic. And also, CK was a very supportive player until she saw that her alliances were not giving that energy back to her. So I find it just so baffling how people see her the way that they do, but they didn't have the benefit of actually being there.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's good to have you here to be able to spill the tea a little bit and shine a
Yeah,
light on some things. And
yeah, yeah.
while you're out now, it's interesting because I feel like you were involved in so many different parts of the season, even though you didn't get the screen time.
I was deeply involved in many parts of the season, and I'm still very involved with almost all my cast members.
Who are you closest with?
Will, CK, David, and MG, and Seychelles. Those are the ones I connect with the most frequently, like pretty regularly, almost every day, at least every week. And then still I keep in touch with Phillip. He's a very busy man, so we don't connect as often. And then the others is kind of like we message on our social media. But those are the ones: David, Will, Seychelles, CK, and MG.
So you got to go on a reality show, compete for a lot of money. Was this a was this a dream for you? Was this something you'd hoped to do for a long time?
It was an utter accident. I
Oh,
didn't I didn't intend to apply at all, right? But I literally I used to watch Deal or No Deal back in the day with Howie Mandel. The new one came on in last year this time. I saw a commercial, I just DVR'd it. In May, which is months after the show had ended, I actually watched it on DVR. And during one of the episodes, they had a little commercial. If you want to be on the show, go to this website. So I went to the website on my cell phone just to see the questions. I'm like, what do they ask? And so I go to the website. You kind of have to fill it out. Like you can't go through it. You got to fill it out next, fill it out next. So I kind of arbitrarily just put in whatever. And then one of those next buttons was a thanks for your submission. I thought nothing of it because I really didn't answer it full on and I didn't want to do it. And the show had aired months before. And sure enough, they called me. And obviously, you know how that ended. So this was not a dream of mine, but I definitely have the bug now. And there are other shows I want to do.
ooh. What's
Yep.
the dream show for you? We'll
Right
wrap
now,
up
the
here in a
dream
couple
show.
minutes.
Yep. The dream show for me is Traders.
Traders.
And I didn't know about Traders. Boston Rob told me about Traders. He was like, you should do Traders because of my gameplay, how perceptive I am, and how I kind of see things that people don't want you to see in their personality. So I came home, watched it, and was like, oh, I would love this. So that would be my number one right now.
Awesome. You're liking this season so far?
I am. I am. I'm enjoying. I've watched. I've binged them all, and I am enjoying them. I just love the nature of the game. I love the round table. I love the
Yeah.
influence of peers. It's like that's just my thing.
Yeah, you'd have some good outfits for the castle.
Apparently, I'd have to bump up the outfits because every time Bob the drag queen alone, I was like, oh my goodness, I might need a stylist.
Lachelle, thank you so much for being here today and being flexible and making this happen. Why don't you throw out your social media handles or anything that you'd like to plug or promote? Go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm Shell Wooten on Instagram. I'm Abandoned Ordinary. That's my brand on TikTok. And my website's abandonedordinary.life.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Thanks
Lachelle.
for having
Hopefully
me
it's not the
back.
last time talking with you.
Same.
All right, that concludes my conversation today with Lachelle Wooten. It was great having her here on the program. We'll be back again next week for more on the Jack Vita Show as we cover Deal or No Deal Island. We're hitting the home stretch, only 6 players remaining. It's getting really interesting. Really, really interesting to see how things shake out. Next week is episode 9. Of course, we are recapping every episode here on the Jack Vita Show. Me and Stephanie Mitchell, the 3rd place finisher from season 1. And we will be, we've got a recap out this week. So if you guys are interested in hearing our thoughts on this week's episode, we really dive deeper into it, share a lot of thoughts on strategy and all kinds of stuff like that. So make sure you guys are all subscribed to the channel. We're here on YouTube, and then we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It is Jack Vita Show Entertainment. You can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, at Jack Vita Show. The TikTok feed, I actually have 2 TikToks for the entertainment feed here, is at Jack Vita Show Entertainment, or at Jack Vita Entertainment, I think is what it's called. So go ahead and follow along, and we'll be back again next week. Until then, I'm Jack Vita. Bring in the dancing lobsters.